In this lesson, we are going to start writing integration tests, and basically this is going to test our API exactly as any human would manually test it. For example, making an API request to an endpoint and expecting a specific result or response. So first we are going to install a supertest package. This package is going to help us make API requests in our test and run assertions on the response received from the API. Next, in our test folder, we are going to create an integration folder, and in here, a folder called auth for all of the integration of endpoints. Next, for the registration process, I'm going to have a register.spec.js. And notice I use the word process because we are not testing the register method in the controller. No, we are testing the whole registration process and how the API responds to registration. So first, I'll define the jest environment, and this will be node. Secondly, I'm going to import supertest from supertest, which is the package we installed. Next, we are going to be testing our API, so I'm going to import the express application. So import server from @server/app. And this is a really important concept to understand. Let's look at the server. We have two files at the root, the app and the index. The app is the Express server. Here we import all of our middleware, we import Express itself, we create our Express instance, define our middleware, register our routes, and then we export the Express application. We do not listen to the server. In the index.js, we import the Express application and then we listen to the server. This is really important. Now, in production, or when we are running our application in development, the package.json file starts the app in dev mode from server/index. So it starts the index file. And this one now listens to a specific port for the application. But when we are testing, we do not want to listen because there's no point running the application. We can simply call the Express application and communicate with the endpoints. So we are going to import the app.js file instead. This is very important. If you want to test your applications, make sure you separate the app from the listener so that you can test the app separately. Next, we are going to create an app, and this is going to be a function that calls supertest and passes in the Express server. So supertest takes in our Express server, and we are going to have a bunch of methods from this return that we can use to test our API. Okay, so the first describe is going to be the register process. It should register a new user. So to register a user, we need to make an API request to the authentication registration endpoint. So this is going to be constant response is await, and if we're using await, this has to be an async function. Then we'll call our app function, which is going to call supertest with the Express server. Then on that, we can call the post method, and this post method takes in the endpoint, which is API/version1/auth/register. Then we are going to send some data to the server, and we have to send valid data. The name is going to be test user. The email is going to be test@user.com. And finally, the password is going to be password. So we are sending valid data to the API, and we are going to console.log the response.body to see exactly what response we get from the server. Now, let's run this test, yarn test. Or in case we want to run specifically only this file, we can copy the file path and then send it as a second argument to the test. So it's going to run only this file. And now we have a successful response from the server, as you can see. The server returns the newly created user's details with an authentication token and a message that says account registered. But we have a pending test right here. The test does not exit after running. And why is this? What we can do to understand this, let's go to our app.js file. At the top, it creates a new mongoose connection. And this connection is what connects to our database so that the user can be registered. And that's one of the reasons why we don't have a before all to create a Mongoose connection. Now, we need to close that connection after our test is done. So we are going to import disconnect from test utils mongoose. Then we are going to have only the after all, and this is going to be an async function that awaits disconnect. Now let's run our test again, and now the test successfully closes because we've closed the connection. But now I need you to notice something else. Our test is now failing. It says the validation failed because the email has already been taken. And this is because the user is registered when we first run the test, and when we run the test the second time, the user already exists in the database. What we can do to remedy this is to make sure we clear the user from the database before we actually start running the test. In this case, we can use the before all hook, which means that it's going to clear the database before it runs all the tests. But if the second test is using the same user, the user is still going to be in the database. So what we want to use is the before each, which means that before it runs any of the tests in this suite, it's going to clear the database. So how do we clear the database? We're going to call await user, and we have to use our user model. So import user from models. And now we can say await user.delete many and pass in an empty object. This is going to clear all database users. So this is how it's done in Mongoose. If you're testing a Postgres database or a MySQL database or objection URL or Next.js, whatever ORM you're using, exactly the same concepts apply. You can have a before each where you clear your database before actually running your integration test. Now let's run our test. And we have a successful test with the user's data. And let's run our test again. And we still have a successful test with the user's data. And that's because before each and every test in this test suite, we cleared the database. Now we need to run some assertions on this test. So we are going to expect, and the first and most important assertion is to expect that the status code is 200. When running integration tests, you want to make sure you assert on the status code to make sure that the status code is right before you run other assertions, because the status code is really important and you don't even want to make other assertions if the status was wrong. And this is an API. If you're building APIs that are going to be consumed by other developers, you want to have tests and you want to make sure that they respond with the correct status codes and the correct status messages. So we are going to expect that the response.body.message should be accounts registered. And then it's also very important to assert that the response also contains a valid JWT. So we are going to say expect response.body.data.token to be defined. At this point, you can go an extra step by getting the token, decoding it with JWT to verify that it actually belongs to this newly created user. You can go that length, but in this case, I think it's fine to just make sure it's defined. Now, we run our test. Our test is successful. Now, we run all of our tests together. And great, all of our tests are successful.